welcome to this additional meeting of the Audit Committee for 26th of February 2026. Are there any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chair. The independent member, Animesh Chandra, sends his apologies for tonight.
Thank you, Democratic Service Office. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 27th of January as correct, please? Great, thank you. Does anybody have any urgent matters? I haven't received any put out. Anybody got any to bring? No urgent matters. Thank you very much. Anybody got any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests for this meeting? Thank you very much. No declarations. I'll now ask to go to item 5, which is the Auditor's Annual Report, Audit Findings Report and Statement of Accounts for 24-25. And I asked the Head of Corporate Accounts, Andy McNally-Johnson, to introduce this report for us. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this very brief. This just presents the, as you said, the Auditor's Annual Report, the Audit Findings Report, and obviously the Statement of Accounts that are due to be signed off through by statute tomorrow and posted onto our website. And obviously we have Ibby from Grant Thornton here, who I'm sure will go through in detail what she wants to do, and will take any questions members may have.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies, Matt is stuck in traffic, so he is not able to make it in time. So if he joins later, he might be able to take any questions, but I'm also available to answer any questions in the interim. And if I can't answer, he'll be able to answer tomorrow or early next week. I'll talk you through first the Audit Findings Report, and then I'll go to the Audit Annual Report, if that's okay. Thank you. Perfect. So before you use our Audit Findings Report for 24-25, this paper presents the outcome of the 24-25 financial year audit. I'll take the report as read. So prior to this report, members would have seen progress reports which were shared during various stages of the audit. To summarise, we received the accounts in July 2025 and started our detailed testing with the aim to finalise the testing by the end of September. Our progress report at the end of September showed that we didn't quite get there. Given the issues we've faced with opening balances as a result of unaudited prior years, our focus on 24-25 was therefore on income and expenditure testing, in-year movement, and where feasible, closing balances. Appendix C of our report demonstrate that we had a few successes and came very close to finalising some areas of testing. However, ultimately, we didn't quite get there. As a result, we are unable to provide any assurances on 24-25 statements of accounts. The anticipated audit opinion for 24-25 would therefore be a disclaimer opinion. In addition to this, there were some areas we were hoping to look into this year, such as IFRS 16. However, we were unable to carry out the detailed work required to give an assurance over these balances. We will be carrying this forward into the next financial year. We are now looking ahead to 25-26, and we've written to management laying out our time frame to complete the 25-26 audit by the end of November this year. We plan to bring this letter to the next Audit Committee. The rest of the report goes into more details on our findings, and I'll pause here for any questions on the Audit Findings Report before I go into the Audit Annual Report. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence, thank you.
Yeah, Chair, just in terms of the capacity issue, we were talking about, tell me if I'm on the wrong bit, I'm sorry, I'm slightly deaf in one ear at the moment. We were talking just before the meeting about capacity, Phil. Can you just say to the committee what we're doing about building that capacity, just so it's for the minutes, please?
Yeah, so just to be clear, there were two key recommendations in the annual audit report, annual auditor's report. One was around financial sustainability, and one was around financial capacity. Just so that everyone's got the context here. Obviously, we have had capacity issues. So when I spoke to the audit committee at previous meeting, I talked about the right sizing exercise and where we've put additional resources into the accountancy team. Some of that resource went into probably the management side of it. And what I've concluded is that we probably need to strengthen the corporate finance side of it. And I think I said that to the committee last time. We've also got issues in that some of my senior management team have recently left, so I need to recruit to those posts. So if I go through the action that I've got lined up for the next few weeks, couple of months, I'm going to speak to an agency next week, or some agencies next week, about recruiting to the Chief Finance Officer post. So hopefully that can be something that we expedite fairly quickly. I will also go out to advert for the head of revenue accounts, but I'll do that through our usual channels and just advertise the role through our recruitment team. But there needs to be a recognition that we need additional resource. I've spoken to the chief executive. In fact, the chief executive's spoken to the auditors to give some assurance that I have his support, and that he's basically given me a mandate to get the resource in and basically work out how we pay for it later to some extent. So I've arranged a workshop session with Dave and Andy, and also Karen Powell, our head of the Exchequer Services and Income and Payments. And we're going to look at literally everything that the finance function does. And we're going to look at it through two lenses. The first one, we're going to look at things that we do that are essential, things that we do that are desirable, and things that actually, why are we still doing this? And try and clear the decks a little bit. And then for those things that we do feel we need to continue, the activity we need to continue with, we're going to rag rate it. Are we doing it well or not so well? And the things that we're doing not so well, is that capability or capacity? And try and address it and come up with an action plan. So I met with the whole of the finance team, about 40 of us, weren't there, in that meeting yesterday. We're going to have a workshop that's got all the business partners involved, the heads of service involved. We're also going to invite some of our other folk into it. I want a few of the younger trainees to come in. Hope they've got some new ideas, and they might just say, yeah, I always wondered why we were doing things that way, and some of the older hands. And I'm, basically, to assure you, I'm really going to look at everything, but with a view to prioritising some of the things that we're not doing so well. And clearly the resource that we put into our statement of accounts and preparing for the audit is one of the things we're not doing so well at the moment. So that's the assurance I'm going to try and give the audit committee.
Great, thanks, Phil. That's great. It'd be good to see how that develops, because I think we had chatted quite at length about trying to get a set of accounts that were fully audited, but obviously if you haven't got the capacity, it's going to be challenging to do that. So the other thing, I've got two other questions, Chair, and you'll be glad to know only two. On MDC, I think we had a long chat about MDC last audit committee and the loans there, but I think the new piece of information for me is the 10 million deficit in their balance sheet. I'm just wondering how that's affected any ongoing discussions or discussions you've had with the auditors about their request for MRP.
So, as you rightly say, the auditors have picked up on that. From two respects really. One, because of the amount of debt that contributes towards our balance sheet, but also, as you say, because the company is posting losses at the moment. But there's a kind of inevitability about that because of the way they have to present their accounts. The loans for PRS are long-term loans because the rents that they're generating at the moment versus what they're paying in terms of interest, that equation doesn't work in the immediate term. But over the course of the 40 or 50 years, as rents go up, it becomes profitable. So that's what we're working on, that the company will become profitable over the longer term. I think a lot of companies, I mean, MDC's been in existence for a few years now, but most new companies start off with losses, don't they? And hopefully get to a point of profitability over the longer term.
Yeah, I think it would be just make the directors would have to be given assurances of the going concern. That's the key. I think the key for me is obviously Grant Thornton don't audit MDC. Might be another conversation in another place that auditors accept MDC as a going concern.
So the conversation I had with Matt and Ibby was that they've given me 6 weeks, or I said give me 6 weeks, and I've gone to MDC and I said I need a complete cash flow forecast over the long term that projects. They've got 2 phases. The phase 1 projects are the ones that are pretty much out the ground already. So we've got Garrison Point, Chatham Waterfront, Mountbatten's kind of nearly there, and we've included Strood Civic Centre as part of phase 1, if you like. And then phase 2 is the pipeline projects that haven't yet commenced. So Strood, Riverside, the Brook, those sort of projects. What this cash flow will demonstrate is that within about a year to 18 months, all of those assets will either be sold, but a fair chunk of them will actually transfer into PRS and be serviced on an ongoing basis from the rental incomes that are generated. And I'm hoping that what that will do is reassure the auditors that the loans are backed by assets and secured against assets, and that there is, as you say, a going concern that gives them some confidence.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the point you made about rents will continue to increase by the rate of inflation, but interest payments remain stable. So, I get that. That's fine. I had just one more question. I was just on the valuation of council dwellings. So there's, I think it's a significant risk. I think it appears on page 81. It's on the valuation of council dwellings. It just sort of occurred to me that the HRA capital spend has got a big chunk of money in it over the next 30 years, and I'm assuming that's asset backed because we're borrowing against to maintain the refurbishment of our current assets, but also to build more assets. And I'm just wondering, does that valuation issue could that affect our, what's the word I'm looking for? Could it affect our ability to borrow that money if we're not entirely certain what the current assets are worth? Sorry. Thank you, Chair. That's it.
So when you say we're not certain about the value, I mean we've had the valuations done. What you're saying is they haven't been audited and signed off. Is that your concern?
So it's definitely is a significant risk within the report.
And we could argue that about every balance in there. This is what the auditors are saying. They can't give me an opinion because they haven't got certainty over the balances that are in the balance sheet, and obviously that's a big part of the additional work that we require the auditors to do. To reassure themselves of the balances, but I mean, I'm comfortable that we're going through the same process to value our assets as we've always done. So I'm confident that the valuations that we put in the balance sheet, I will come to you in a minute, are valid. Now, in terms of the borrowing that's in the forward plan, you talked about the 30-year business plan. A significant chunk of that is to actually acquire assets that are from another provider at the moment. So yes, that will be backed by the assets, that borrowing. Yeah,
that'll be subject to proper valuation at the time we take that on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was only going to say on the valuations, whether it's the 5-year full valuation or the desktop exercise, that's carried out by fully recognised valuers who will have obviously appropriate indices, or at that time they will go round and look at those values. So we are, as Phil said, we're confident that the values that they're coming up with are appropriate and right.
I've got Councillor Hackwell and Councillor Nesterov.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just staying on the balance thing. One of the reports, one of the concerns in the report is we don't know what our closing balances were for the last 4 years. How have we actually got a plan now to say that we will sort what those closing balances are? Because I can't see us getting off the merry-go-round. I have got some more questions, but we'll do one at a time. Yeah.
Obviously, that's the thing. I'm going to invite Ibby to talk in a minute, but this is the thing that we've been working with on the auditors, because we will never get off. You're right. We will never get off the disclaimed audit merry-go-round until we can get to a point where the auditors have some assurance over our brought forward balance. Ibby, would you like to explain to the audit committee what the Grant Thornton's plan is for that?
Yes, certainly. So with us, our first biggest key point was to get in-year transactions testing done. And so that was our first point of call before we can start reviewing assurance. So we are certain that things that have happened in the financial year have gone according to what we would expect. And then we can start looking at the opening balances. So for most of our authorities who are in the process of reviewing assurance, they've had just 1 year unaudited rather than with Medway 4 years. So we're starting and piloting a scheme whereby we look at those entities that just have 1 or 2 years outstanding, and we've piloted it for this year where one of it has been successful, and that is the plan we're trying to, I guess, put out to other authorities, seeing how that works. But our biggest point of call was making sure that we can do in-year testing and complete that to the best of our ability and have no issues. Then we can start the rebuilding assurance. So there is a plan in the works. We understand that the government are holding back on finances for the rebuilding assurance at the moment. So we know that is also under discussion and things that we are discussing as a firm on the way forward for next financial year.
Okay, so and you've also got a shortened time frame next year as well. So it's a more it's a more of a concern for me, because we haven't managed it with longer time frames. How are we going to manage it with shorter, unless you're going to throw 10 times the people in? Or what is the plan? That's really what I'm trying to get to. Are you going to put more people in to Medway, or what's going to happen? Because I can't see the bones of a plan apart from we're going to turn up and try.
Yes, the MSCRG have written to us, and there is the pressure on us as well to deliver on the audit. So we've written to Phil, and the letter will bring it to next audit committee, demonstrating that we are doing what we can to ensure that we rebuild this assurance over the next few years. But yes, we are going to put in the capacity from our side, and we'll ask the council as well to put in that capacity so that we can get there as much as possible for the next year.
The second question I have is around the internal control failures. You identified unreconciled bank items back to 2000 and 2 million of unallocated cash at year end. Beyond, how are you going to sort that out as well at the same time, is the question.
So what I would say is this obviously forms part of our overall plan that we're going through at the moment, as well as the fact that we have Grant Thornton in with us right now, planning the 25/6 audit. We have our own internal plans. And what we're looking at is some of these key issues to make sure, for example, that unallocated income at the end of the year, we can get that information out and make sure that we don't have those high levels as we do. We're also having to learn from the things that didn't go well in this one and make sure we put things in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. So all of the things that are in there are forming part of what we are taking forward and what Phil is taking forward to make sure we learn from the things that didn't go so well this year. We know it's going to be difficult, but we're already aware of that, and that the plans that we're building in is trying to be as smart as we can with the resources that we've got. And that's what Phil alluded to in his conversation about the steering group, the working group we've got, to make sure that we use our resources and put them into those things that we need the most, to take that forward. And if we feel we need something else, then obviously Phil has already alluded to, we'll use that if we can or if we need to.
Just to follow up on that, if I may, Andy, we know that at past audit committees, we've talked about one of the reasons it went wrong is you didn't have enough resource and all the rest. And Phil's alluded to say that, he's got the chief executives backing to get some more resource. How long? And I'm not talking about the leadership force, but actually people on the ground to actually do the job, so that we do the job properly and put all the right tickets in the right places. How long is that process going to take us? And what would you say roughly we are understaffed by, percentage wise? I'm not talking about numbers, but
So I think in terms of I think we should have enough resource for in a business as usual position, yeah. But I think it's focused in the wrong place. So I think too much of our resource is on the forecasting and the monitoring and setting the budget and what have you. They're not the real numbers. The real numbers are the cash and that's going through the books, and we've probably not got enough resource there. So in the corporate finance side, ensuring that transactions are properly recorded in the accounts and that sort of thing, and certainly looking at, I mean, debtors is a big area that I want to look at. Both in terms of the debtors that we put in manually as journals and the actual raising of invoices and that sort of stuff and the evidence that sits behind it. So there's a bit about refocusing and reprioritising. So there might be a bit of restructuring almost, moving some of the resource into the corporate finance function. But in the immediate term, we need to get on top of this. So it will be additional resource, but I see it as being fixed term. I don't see it being permanently which means I can talk to agencies about getting expertise in the areas that we identify, and we haven't done that work yet. That's what the workshop's going to tease out for us, and bring them in for 3 months, 6 months, whatever we need to get up to speed.
just a quick question: do we still have the debtors monthly meeting or quarterly meeting we used to have? Well, I used to attend under Karen's leadership.
So the corporate debt group still works together. So Karen is still kind of leading debt collection on behalf of the whole organisation. So you've got people from adult social care, you've got people from parking and all sorts involved in that. It's just an officer group now, though. Okay, so obviously when you were the portfolio holder, we had that political leadership to get things established, but it's now an officer group that just runs. Yeah.
Councillor Nestorov, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. I have a couple of very easy questions. So obviously it's a massive report and you can have thousands of questions on it. So my first question is, I noticed the FIT plan, it has found savings 87% of the one that were scheduled, if you want. My first question is actually why it's in red. If we find 87% of the full, why the KPI is still in red? And can we make it 100% next year, basically?
Did you want to ask the second one as well? And then it will be back.
No, let's do this one and they'll.
Fair enough. What if I answer this one? So yeah. So part of the benefit that the FIT plan has given us is even when we're forecasting in service areas, and let's be real about this. The big pressure, we've talked about the treasury pressure, but the big pressure of service is in adult social care. And what happens is every year, Jackie and her team deliver lots of activity and do lots of reviews and all the things they said they're going to do, but then they still overspend because of what's happening in the NHS and just the pressures seem to be ramping up in the sector, and it's a nationwide issue. But what we've not been able to demonstrate in the past is that we're trying to do something about it. We set a budget, it overspends, and the criticism comes back to Jackie's team that, well, you're not doing anything. What are you doing about this? What the FIT plan allows us to do is actually say, demonstrably we are doing stuff. You know, when we talk about delivering those targets, where she's committed to delivering 100 reviews, we can monitor that and say, yeah, she delivered 100 reviews, and actually those 100 reviews reduced the cost of those, the unit costs of those placements significantly. But what we've got to try and do is disaggregate that from the pressures that we didn't foresee coming, and try and explain that. So that's one of the benefits that the FIT plan gives us. But yeah, I mean, your question, why therefore are we still in the red? Clearly, the demographic pressures that are coming down the track, in some cases the inflationary pressures, are just not what we reflected in the budget, and we undersold them, I guess, to some extent.
So can we make it 100% next year of the proposed savings?
Well, I think we're delivering 100% to the target. The bit we're finding is that the demographics mean that there are more people coming into the system. Those people are costing more than we anticipate they would cost.
Oh yeah, people, like, we get the elderly population.
I mean, the NHS is the pressures that come out of the NHS. I think the hospital, isn't it, something like £100 million, £149 million pressure in the NHS. Now that absolutely manifests as a pressure to social services.
Yeah, question 2 is about exceptional financial support. I think Vince spoke about it a bit yesterday. How
I don't know if you really spoke about it. No, you should have.
how confident we are we going to need it next year or not?
$1 million question.
Okay, so the position that we've reported at council meeting yesterday is in line with what we said to MHCLG when I first asked for EFS a couple of years ago. So we predicted then that we would need, I think it was 14 million in year 1, 18 million in year 2, 10 million in year 3. Well, obviously in year 1 we ended up taking 20 million. In year 2, based on the round 3 forecasts, we're looking at 28, but we're confident it won't be that level. It will be more than the 18 that we reflected in the budget, I suspect, but it won't be 28. But the budget that we've set for next year relies on the 10 million. But what gives me more confidence that for 27, 28, and I said this in my section 25 statement in the budget report, is that the settlement has been more positive for us than we were anticipating. It has been more positive. Fair Funding Review has done what we expected it to do, which is to divert more resources to authorities like Medway. And over the course of the 3 years, our settlement is more positive. And if you look at, I think it was Appendix 9 of the budget report, it shows the sort of medium-term projections, and those deficits at the bottom there, that's the savings target that we've got to identify in setting the 27-28 budget. And I think it suggests something like 8 to 9 million that we need to find to balance the 27-28 budget without recourse to EFS. That's probably the lowest those projections have ever been, and I think should be infinitely deliverable. In fact, I'm sticking my head above the parapet here now, but I would like to think when we bring the draft budget in November, I'll be able to bring a balanced budget at that point. That's what I'm aiming for.
The main thing is the trajectory is downwards.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. While we're still on EFS, so your prediction in the amount we're borrowing is a lot, we're going to have to borrow a lot more than we originally said 3 years ago, of course. Is that financially sustainable? I mean, because, you know, borrowing 60 million or whatever it is at 4.5%, you know, it's although it's only permission to borrow it, it's not actually borrowing it. How do you feel that and I'll ask another one after.
So in terms of whether what we've asked for so far is sustainable, we've reflected that, the interest impact of that, within our projections. So that's part of that £8 million gap that we've got to try and close for 27-28. So on that basis, if we can deliver a budget for 27-28 without recourse to EFS, I think it is financially sustainable. Right, but it depends whether we can find those savings that we need to close the gap in 27-28. If we do, 28, 29, and well, you know, LGR. Yeah, but if Medway were continuing, that gap would be very tiny to close in those further years. Because I have some, you know, a lot of confidence in the demographic projections we've made. I know I've said that before, but you know, I think it's a robust set of medium-term projections as well.
But history has shown us that adult, especially adult, doesn't overspend by at least 10 million a year anyway compared to their budget. So that, you know, we've either given them a bad budget or it's going to happen again. What do you think is going to happen to stop history repeating itself?
So in the past, we've balanced the budget by making assumptions around savings, but we've not given the departments the tools to deliver them. Now, what EFS has given us is an opportunity to invest in right-sizing adult social care, to invest in the technology, to invest in the service, to pay people at the right place so that we're not having the turnover of social workers, you know, all of that, which at some point it's got to have an impact and start turning the tide. So I think that's the difference. So we've not just made cuts based on savings targets without giving people the tools to deliver those savings. I think that for me is the difference.
We've mentioned at previous audit report meetings about the evidence wasn't available when the auditors were looking for the evidence. You still had it, but you had to go and re-get it. How confident are you that that this year's evidence is going to be there when next year's audit starts? Because I guess it wasn't discovered until midway through the year. So that's one question.
If I could start.
Yeah. Okay.
So that goes back to the point I made about the workshop that we're going to have, because it is about making sure that the resources are in the team and doing that stuff. So like I said, that I think Andy's got his core team in corporate finance, but he relies on the accountants that are out there working with the services. The workshop, and actually the message I gave them yesterday, is that they need to focus on this stuff as well, because if we get it right at the beginning, then we're not trying to pull them off the job that they're doing to retrofit the evidence because it's not there. So all right, I was going to let Andy come in.
All I was going to say is we're what, 10 months into the year, aren't we? Because this is the 25. Yeah. If you haven't been doing that for the last 10 months,
no, that's true. That's true.
and just going to have a workshop, we're not going to be in the same right place for the audit, are we?
Yeah, but that's the job that they've got to do. So between now and the auditors coming in, they've got to make sure that evidence is there, that there's backing papers. So a big part of the thing that we don't do very well is balance sheet codes, for example. So there's balances on there. Where's the evidence that explains what's in that balance sheet code and what the plan is for it? It's getting all of that stuff up to date. But I'm going to let Andy come in and explain a bit more.
Yeah, I think probably the workshop that Phil's on about is another strand of the improvement that we're going through. Last year, following the audit, we had another large team meeting, and a whole chunk of that was Ibby and her colleague Antoinette came and they gave a full presentation to us, and they gave examples of exactly the sort of evidence that they need. So it's crystallised and clarified some of the issues we had. So the issues we did have is, one, we didn't have working papers on time. We know that's got to change this year. We've built that into our timetable. Then we didn't have appropriate evidence that was provided, so that meant that GT then had to come back and say, well, that's not quite right. So we know we've got to get that right. That sort of information has been disseminated already to the accountants, to the business partners, and in that sense, to the services that they sometimes rely on. And I know our business partners, for example, in children and adults, where we have 2 business partners, have been speaking to the services and looking at the systems to make sure that evidence is available. So this year we know exactly the sort of evidence that's required, and we've got actual examples to show the specific evidence that's required. So I think we're starting off from a much better position, and I think, as Phil said, that workshop will only enhance that, but it's not the only thing we're relying on. So we are, it's not like we're just starting this process now. This process has started many months ago, and we're just moving towards that. So we're not 10 months in, nothing's happened. That's what I'm trying to give you some assurance about.
Do we have any financial internal auditors that could go and verify that before Grant Thornton start their audit?
It's interesting you say that, because we were talking about that, and whether I get my hands dirty and actually start looking at stuff and asking questions way before the auditors come in. So there's a bit of that going on. Hazel, or Councillor Brown, said to me when we spoke earlier today about getting James's team involved in doing some of that, and I can certainly talk to him about whether he does some kind of pre-audit audit.
Thanks for these really great questions, and also for the report, which does focus us on all the strands that we need to produce. My questions, some of them are comments. An organisation this size needs to have everybody recognising that this financial sustainability is everybody's responsibility. Now, I don't know how often we mandate courses for frontline officers that are not in the finance department, but accounting for financial management for non-accounting was a course that the local government authorities used to always run for service managers, and it did teach people how to produce the figures that their management accountant needed. Now, I think that in your workshop, Phil, and this is a suggestion, that there is discussion about how many people actually know what they're supposed to be doing to help the finance guys and girls do what we need to do to produce the audit. That's one question. The other one that I would suggest is, we talk about overspends, but the big thing, and we've talked about it here, and Councillor Hackwell has raised it this evening, which is the recovery of funds that we are owed by people who use services that we cannot withdraw from. The refusal to pay when people have to receive services. That is a debt on everybody, but people seem to think that that's all right. But we cannot withdraw those services because the vulnerable person needs the service. But the family or the person is due to pay and they refuse. So we have a big moral issue here that I think we need to start talking about, the debts that are owed at all levels, whether it's somebody that, has a license and hasn't paid their license fee, or somebody who's receiving a service and they don't pay it, or whether it's outstanding. And actually the collection rate on council tax is pretty good, but it's those sort of outstanding things. And I think it's about time that we were open with ourselves. Overspends are sometimes because of issues with growth of demand, but sometimes it's actually because people aren't paying for what they owe. So I think I've been banging on about collection rates, whether it's rents, whether it's council tax, and I brought it to this meeting. Other people have raised it here. I think you should be assured, Ibby, that this committee is committed to looking at every single strand of the business. So, Phil, I hope I haven't spread the thing too wide for your workshop, but do you think it would be reasonable to take some of these points into it?
Yes, so the strands that we already have been putting in place for training. So there is normally what we call a year-end pack that goes out to all budget managers and all of those out in the services, and it gives a sort of a step-by-step guidance for of what's expected of those managers to help us with year-end and what they're meant to do. I think what you're saying probably goes wider than that, but what we've also put on is training courses. Now, I can't tell you what percentage of the organisation has come along to those, but we've carried those out, and we will go through probably wider things than the year end. We'll go through day-to-day things that we would expect. Also, on top of that, our business partners who work out there with the services and their accountants are on hand at any time to give guidance, advice and help to managers out there to help them manage the financial side of things, which, as you would say, would perhaps be alien to them because that's not their main job. But it's our job to help them to manage that process. But yeah, we have got training in place, and we intend to carry on with that and look for various ways. We're looking at maybe providing videos that people can access at any time to give them guidance. So it's not just you've got to come to a training session, although we accept that there's a benefit in training sessions where people can ask questions if they're not quite sure. If you've got a video in front of you, that's not quite so easy to do. But it's just to give you some assurance those things are in place, and we are continuing to look at new ways of how we can get that out there. Obviously, Phil may want to jump in with other things on as you've said, with regards to the workshop. But I'm hoping that gives some assurance that we do look to provide that training and guidance to officers out there.
Yes, I wanted Andy to talk about the training and the guidance and the close down pack. Andy sort of touched on it, but one of the things that the message I gave to the team when I met with them yesterday, and one of the things I want to reinforce through the work we do through the workshop, is that I want them to take more responsibility for the transactional level stuff, not just the budgets and the forecasting, but the transactional level stuff. So making sure that when someone raises an invoice for money that's owed, that at that point they are putting the evidence in there so that Karen's team can find it much easier to chase that debt. So it's got the twin benefit. One, it's the evidence that the auditor needs so they can say, yes, that's a legitimate debt, tick, but also so that Karen can say, right, okay, I've got an email here, or I've got something here, or purchase order, or whatever it is that commits the third party to pay that, and it's easier for us to pursue it and collect that debt. Because I mean, I said it yesterday, didn't I, Andy? Debt is one of the areas of real focus for me, because I think our balance sheet, the working capital side of our balance sheet, the debt is outstripping the creditors by too much, and there's got to be a reason for that, and I want to unpack it. So.
Thanks, Phil. I'm happy to know that at least we've named a problem and we're willing to discuss it. It is difficult within the public sector for people to talk about debt, but I'm glad we're doing that. The other thing I was going to ask, is there any evidence coming back from the management accountants that confidence is either growing or is at a level that they're happy with out in the services, because I have spoken to some assistant directors who say actually making sure that people understand the financial consequences of their jobs is helping them to understand why they're being asked for stuff. Is there any evidence of that coming back, either positively or negatively?
Whilst I'm not directly involved in the management account side of things, the meeting that Phil has spoken about yesterday, we certainly had quite a lot of feedback from our business partners that out in the services, people are keen on knowing how the finances are going for them and making sure that they're on top of that. So we obviously, with the monitoring that we do, we provide the tools for them to do that through our finance system. We're keen on making sure that everybody is able to access that system and use it as to help them do that. Phil may want to jump in with something that I've forgotten, but I'm trying to give you a flavour there.
Yeah, I think one of the so I talked earlier about the need to reprioritise where our capacity is focused, and I think the monitoring is whilst it's not directly related to the conversation that we're having at the moment around the accounts. That's an area where we used to do quarterly monitoring. And SIPFA came in and told us that wasn't enough because we didn't have enough kind of real-time information about the trajectory that the council was on in terms of its finances. And by the time that was being reported, it was too late to do anything about it. So we've moved to monthly. Now, it isn't every month because we didn't do anything in the first month, and by the time it's the last month, it's pointless. We're in out-term report territory. But I think we had about 9 reporting cycles, didn't we, for the monitoring this year? But what folk are saying to me is that it's too onerous and they're not doing justice to it because it's just a treadmill. So one of the many things we're going to be looking at this workshop is the monitoring cycle, and we need to find a happy medium. Sorry?
Why is it onerous? We used to do it monthly.
Yeah, but so your question about are people like it. The managers like that. They like the discipline of having to look at their accounts, and I don't want to discourage that. I mean, for anyone who's responsible for a budget, I want them in their system whenever they got a spare half hour and just keeping tabs on what's going on, going through their cost centres and what have you. So I don't want to discourage that at all. But it's the reporting that's onerous because it has to go through so many hoops. It goes, before it gets to cabinet, it goes through directorate, CMT, and then cabinet. I don't know whether divisional management teams have these conversations as well. I think we need to look at the way the forecasts are entered in the system because there's sign-off hoops that make it more onerous as well. We just need to look at that and make the monitoring process less onerous. What the accountants on the ground, that's what they're telling me, that it's too onerous and that's why it's taken up too much of their time. I need their attention on other things. So we're going to look at the monitoring.
But you're not. You're looking at the report because that's where you say the onerous is. Monitoring.
Yeah.
Oh, let's be precise.
Yeah. All right. The monitoring process. It's the reporting element of that's the onerous bit. Yes.
Is there real-time financial information? So if a manager's sitting at his desk and wants to know what is his position today, he can actually look at that and they can monitor that in almost real time.
Yes, as transactions go a process through the purchase ledger and the sales ledger, they're hitting the general ledger, and if they log on and look at their codes in the general ledger, the latest transactions are there. Yeah, it's a real-time system in that sense.
Any more questions? Ibby, is there anything that you want to add to this for us? Some guidance or questions or anything?
No, not from me, but Matt said he's available if anything wasn't clear today to answer any questions to you, Chair, or any members of the committee.
Is the MDC thing resolved between you? Because you want the report said that they should be in it. You should be putting MRP on it. You've said they're what was the word you used? Performing. Yeah. And is it resolved between you? That's really my question.
I'll let it be coming in a minute. I'm standing by my position, and I've said that in the management action. As far as I'm concerned, I've taken advice from SIPFA. I understand where the auditor's coming from, because they're arguing about the prudence of it, and at the moment they're looking at our MDC loans and seeing risk, and therefore believe that the action that I'm taking is not prudent enough. The piece of work that I've asked MDC to do for me, I'm hoping will demonstrate that, in 6 weeks' time, that the cash flows and the fact that most of that debt will move into PRS and be secured against assets will give the auditor some assurance. But at the moment, we're still in a different place.
Yes, I agreed. We haven't yet reached a resolution on this, so it's something that's going to go into 25-26. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation again for the next financial year.
I move to the Vice Chair, please. Thank you.
Chair. I move the recommendation on page 17. Audit Committee note the Auditor's Report, Annual Report 2024-25 at Appendix 1. Audit Committee note the Audit Findings Report, ISA 260 2024-25 as per Appendix 2. Audit Committee approves the Draft Management Letter of Representation 2024-25 as per Appendix 3. Audit Committee approves the Statement of Accounts for 2024-25 as per Appendix 4.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Meeting's now closed.
Maybe we should get